Loki as a show was presented with a challenge in the context of the greater MCU. The story follows post-Avengers villain Loki, not the one we as an audience have watched develop over all the Thor movies. However, it's pretty clear that the writers didn't want to abandon all of that development, so they came up with a solution to fast track it. They had him watch his life as it would have happened so he could see the consequences of his future actions, and there would be a way to incite change. Now, I've seen people who had problems with this for various reasons, ranging from how he'd have been able to see the important parts of what must have been about 6 years of footage in the short amount of time he had before he was caught, to whether or not watching yourself go through character development would cause said character development in you, to the fact that Loki's Loki, that's confusing, let's call him TV Loki, seems more altruistic than even Ragnarok Loki, who experienced the development himself. But for all I enjoyed the show, I have one major problem with TV Loki's reaction to movie Loki. And that's that I don't believe he has the right reaction. Loki, the TV show, this will get very confusing, has a narrative drive about free will and the fact that the TVA have molded the universe into one continuity, erasing every wrong choice so the timekeeper's plan will be put perfectly into motion. It's what he was complaining about in the episode. So why is he so shaken by the clips of their plan for his life? If anything, he should be angry at them for writing his life so that he's responsible for the death of both his parents and himself. This is the difference between how both Lokis experienced those events. Movie Loki lived through them as the consequences of his actions, and they caused him to change. TV Loki watched it as the sacred timeline and what a group of people he just met had constructed as what his life was supposed to be according to their plan. In the companion video to this I made asking why Loki is so weak in his TV show, I brought up classic Loki talking about how useless knives are against Thanos, but even that's hardly Loki's fault. Any version of him that didn't attack with a knife would have been pruned unless they also cast a powerful illusion immediately afterwards and hid themselves on an abandoned planet. And that's the show's main narrative obstacle. It wants to be an introspective story about the nature of Loki and how he always betrays people, but it's trapped in a story where Loki's never been allowed to make a choice. Anytime he does the quote-unquote wrong thing, he gets pruned. So when the TVA talk about how untrustworthy he is and how he'll always be the same and backstab people, I find myself going, you literally molded him and the universe around him into that, and you will never let him be any different. Basically, Kid Loki was right.
And whenever one of us dares try to fix themselves, they're sent here to die.
Now, I must admit that in the context of the multiverse, there does exist a reality where Loki would do the exact same things he does in the movies. But given the lack of free will to make those choices, we can as much really blame him as we can give him praise for a universe where he grew past his insecurities, got closer to his brother, and led an army to defeat Thanos. Because while what Loki is watching is his future, it's not the kind of future where it's inevitable. It's a future that's essentially been created by wiping out every other timeline or possibility where he doesn't do that. I'd have loved to see the TVA agents try to talk down to Loki about being who he is, and he simply asks if they pruned the version of him that was a better person, or why they are so dissatisfied with the Loki they created. There's a theory floating around that Sylvie was going to be pruned for idolizing the Valkyrie and being on her way to being a good person. It's just a theory, but I can't believe it. Which in and of itself raises questions about why a female version of Loki wasn't pruned for being born female, or why Odin wasn't pruned for making boastful Loki black. The fact that they weren't pruned immediately and only later when they strayed from the path means that there is a possibility that they could have been allowed to continue to exist, which raises world building questions. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Watching his life in this context wouldn't have made Loki a better person, or made him think he needs to change, or make him sit in the corner and reveal his insecurities to his captor. Those should have been lies that the fanatic members of the organization would have bought hook, line and sinker. It should have made him more determined to take down the TVA, because they are essentially responsible for everything that's happened and everything that will happen, good and bad, to him and to everyone else. But seeing as this is Loki, most importantly, to him. Sure, he loses, but they are the reason he can never win. Not anything wrong with him. Any reality where he's not responsible for the suffering of those around him and himself will simply not be allowed to exist. You can't be part of an organization responsible for taking free will out of the equation, then blame someone for how they act. If anything, they should blame you for deciding that's how they should act.
TVA doesn't just know your whole past, we know your whole life, how it's all meant to be. And then the Dark Elves attack the palace, and you think you send them to Thor, but instead you send them... You lead them right to her.
I don't believe you.
That's the proper flow of time, and it happens again and again and again because it's supposed to. TVA makes sure of it.
Loki shouldn't be trying to take over TVA because he's Loki and therefore he wants to rule. Or if anything, his main motivation for wanting to take it over or destroy it should explicitly be so he wouldn't be, as Mobius put it,
You weren't born to be king, Loki. You were born to cause pain and suffering and death, all so that others can achieve their best versions of themselves.
Speaking of free will, everyone watching this has the free will to hit the like button, subscribe, comment their thoughts on the matter, and then check out the companion video about Loki's powers, and they can be blamed and praised for doing so. Unless the TVA is a real thing, in which case you'll all probably be pruned if you don't. Thank you and good day.